In the race for Ukraine, Russia believed its slow and steady pace would ultimately win the war. It had no desire to be the hare. Russia was perfectly content to act as the tortoise, though one moving so slowly that the famous reptile itself would be embarrassed. Now Ukraine has just shattered the tortoise's shell. Employing a completely new assault tactic, Ukraine has torn through the Russian front lines in Zaporizhzhia. A single brutal push resulted in a 3.5-kilometer breakthrough, a development that must have Vladimir Putin wondering what just transpired. This news comes from United 24 Media, which reported on October 12 that Ukraine's specially formed assault troops did precisely what they were created for. They drove back against the Russian defenses, exerting so much pressure that the lines broke completely, allowing Ukraine to liberate a village. We can see this in a reel posted to Facebook which declared the liberation of Mali Sherbaki with a message. Units of the 24th Separate Assault Battalion, IDAR, together with their brothers-in-arms from the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment, raised the Ukrainian flag in the settlement of Mali Sherbaki in the Zaporizhzhia front. The post stated, "The settlement is under the control of the defense forces of Ukraine." The post celebrated the coordination between the two units, which is visible in the use of the Ukrainian word pobratymami. This term, which loosely means brothers-in-arms, demonstrates that Ukraine's new assault strategy is forging stronger bonds between its troops than ever. Where Russia might attack in uncoordinated waves to achieve results, Ukraine counters its gains with teamwork, dedication, and a capacity to unleash coordinated hell upon its foes. Keep the name Sherbaki in mind as well. We will return to it shortly. For now, there's an extra layer of symbolism tied to Ukraine's act of raising its flag in a recaptured village. Naturally, such an act is common. A flag raising has long been a symbol of victory. However, Ukraine might have seized this moment to counter a tactic Russia has used with growing frequency in recent months, infiltrating villages to raise flags falsely, even when Russia has not actually captured anything. We only have to see what occurred in Verbove to witness this new Russian tactic. Early in October, Russia asserted its troops had taken that small village, the Verbove in the Dnipropetrovsk region, not its more well-known namesake in Zaporizhzhia. Russia was not telling the truth, as the few soldiers who entered Verbove were eliminated by Ukraine in minutes. Russia's propaganda efforts with fake flag raising are detailed in one of our other videos, so check that out for more information. But you only need to understand two things. Russia fakes its flag raising. Ukraine does it upon actually recapturing territory. Further proof that Mali Sherbaki is in Ukrainian hands comes from Colonel Valentin Manko, the leader of the Assault Forces Directorate of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He confirmed in a Facebook video that the assault on Mali Sherbaki was a success, and he added some more details. Manko stated that Ukraine also cleared the nearby similarly named village of Sherbaki during its assault, which is why we told you to remember the name. Furthermore, Ukraine's assault troops also partially liberated another small village, Stepov, making October 12th a highly productive day for Ukraine as it seeks to push further into occupied Zaporizhzhia. A productive day for Ukraine equates to a very bad day for Russia, and Manko elaborated on just how bad it was. These village clearances were part of a coordinated Ukrainian push that reclaimed a significant amount of territory in one day. As reported by Euromaidan Press, Ukraine advanced 3.5 kilometers into Zaporizhzhia along a 5-kilometer front. This translates to a 3.1-mile-wide contingent of Ukrainian forces pushing just over 2 miles forward, crushing Russian forces as they advanced and possibly setting the stage for future assaults. This was not just a bad day for Russia, it was excruciating. As CNN reported on October 1st, Russia was already struggling with a substantial slowdown in its advance after a summer offensive that did not achieve any of Putin's stated objectives. In September, Russia captured just 259 square kilometers of Ukraine for the whole month, roughly 100 square miles. That represented 44% less territory than Russia seized in August, which brings us back to Ukraine's recent achievement. With Russia's slow advance, every piece of gained territory is like gold dust for Putin as he tries to build a perception that Russia's victory is inevitable. When Ukraine recaptures territory in counterassaults, That perception is destroyed. Mali Shcherbaki has just demonstrated that Ukraine is every bit as capable of taking ground as Russia is. And with Ukraine's new assault strategy, Putin's problems may have only just begun. We will delve deeper into Ukraine's new assaults later. But first, the recapture of Mali Shcherbaki and its neighboring villages will sting Russia for another reason, as Euromaidan press highlights. The outlet notes that Russia had only reached the outskirts of these villages as recently as March 2025, after a push into the nearby settlement of Pyatakatki. That March offensive allowed Russia to advance 4 kilometers deep across a 10-kilometer line. Ukraine counterattacked, retaking Shcherbaki in the process. However, Russia launched a counter-assault on the village in July, seizing the territory that Ukraine had just regained. So this was no ordinary counter-offensive by Ukraine. It was the definitive end to a saga that began back in March. The back and forth over these villages is finished for now, with Ukraine emerging as the victor. On the surface, Ukraine's achievement on October 12th might appear minor. Liberating a few villages and executing a deep push through Russian lines is impressive, but it's still a relatively small amount of land. However, a broader view of the war shows that the liberation of Mali Shcherbaki is part of a much larger trend unfolding across the country. Ukraine is on the counterattack and has been methodically clawing back territory from occupying Russian forces for months. We just need to look at the situations in Dobropilya and Donetsk to see this. On October 10th, United 24 media reported on statements from Ukrainian Army Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky. These comments, made during a field visit 2 days prior, revealed that a full-scale Ukrainian counteroffensive is currently underway. All of this is enabled by something we touched on earlier, Ukraine's new assault tactics, and the data shows these tactics are effective. In its report on the achievement in Mali Shcherbaki, Militarny summarized what Ukraine is doing differently in its assaults to regain so much territory. It reports that Ukraine is now using assault troops as a tool to break through Russia's defenses and mobile reserves in multiple regions. In every case, the success of these assault troops is due to a change in Russian tactics. The Moscow Times reported on these changes in September, noting Russia's use of what it calls sabotage groups to penetrate deep behind the front. It quotes Syrsky, who states, "Since the beginning of summer, there has been a change in the enemy's tactics. Their main task is to penetrate as deeply as possible into our territory, to withdraw, regroup, and advance again, then attack targets deep inside to paralyze our logistics and troop rotations." Militarny adds that these Russian units can be as small as 4 to 6 soldiers, with the goal seemingly being to sneak troops through the front lines rather than breaking them entirely. It's an approach that is somewhat effective. Russia is indeed claiming small settlements with these sabotage groups, and the small size of these units allows them to make numerous small gains that, on the surface, add up to impressive numbers. However, Ukraine is now exposing the downside of Russia's strategy. Small units cannot properly entrench themselves to build defenses capable of stopping a Ukrainian counterattack. Russia's infiltration units lack armor support, and the gaps they create in the front lines are so narrow that Ukraine can close them swiftly. Once these holes are sealed, Russian soldiers are encircled, cut off from supplies and reinforcements. Then, Ukraine launches its assaults, and Russia's forces lose the territory they had just claimed. Ukraine has established a brand new branch of its military to conduct these territory reclaiming assaults, which operates differently from the Air Assault Forces, or DSHV. Syrsky explains, "The air assault troops are an elite infantry unit that can attack, defend, and raid, and assault units are rapid reaction units. They operate where it is most difficult, do not have fixed defense lines, and are called upon to break through the enemy's first line." As Russia attempts to infiltrate, Ukraine is now countering with its own small units that respond in real time to every Russian advance. Writing in his Medium column, The Strategic Edge, former U.S. soldier and federal agent Brian Eisland provides even greater detail on Ukraine's new assault forces. He states that Ukraine has created a mobile reserve that is free-flowing and active nationwide. This reserve is specifically designed to break Russian defenses, especially in areas where Russia has made gains using smaller units. These assault forces are not fighting alongside the main body of Ukraine's troops. They are not engaged on the front lines or defending against Russian advances. Instead, their sole focus is launching attacks, and they have been remarkably successful over the last 2 months. The recapture of Mali Shcherbaki is simply the latest example of these new assault forces in action. Iselin notes that several Ukrainian outlets have reported a common blueprint for these new forces. Small assault groups, lots of night work, flanking rather than frontal pushes, and immediate handoffs to heavier units once the door is open. This might sound familiar. It's similar to what Russia is attempting, only Russia has been failing. We previously mentioned that part of Ukraine's strategy involves closing the gaps created by Russian infiltrators. Without those gaps, Russia cannot send in the reinforcements or heavy units needed to secure its gains. Ukraine does not have this issue. Its assault groups are doing the same thing as Russia's, but they have the muscle to back it up. This may be a symptom of Ukraine's defensive posture versus Russia's offensive one. Russia's new strategy might be failing because it is overstretched, and as United 24 Media noted in October, Russia has already exhausted most of its armor. Its heavy units may not be arriving because they simply don't exist. Ukraine, conversely, appears to have the necessary heavy units, and its assault groups succeed because they support the defenses behind them instead of acting independently. While the assault groups are mobile across Ukraine, they are deployed in specific areas where recaptures are feasible. And as noted in the 24th Separate Assault Battalion's Facebook post, Ukraine's assault groups coordinate with their comrades to ensure every recapture is permanent. Supporting Ukraine's new assault approach is a change in how the country trains its infantry. The Kyiv Post highlighted this in an October 10th report, explaining that these training changes are a response to the evolving battlefield. The outlet observes that drones are now the primary threat, which has led infantry units to often remain in fortified trenches instead of launching the large-scale assaults of the past. This is a challenge for both sides. As Army Technology notes, drones are now responsible for up to 80% of casualties in the war, making the large assaults Russia once favored nearly impossible. There are simply too many unmanned vehicles poised to eliminate troops and armor to make such assaults viable. Ukraine is not immune to this drone proliferation, as Russia uses plenty of its own fiber optic and FPV drones. This explains the small Russian infiltration units and Ukraine's similarly small new assault groups. Still, the Kyiv Post notes, infantry must recapture territory. That is one of the few tasks drones cannot yet perform. The outlet states that Ukraine's new infantry training has revolutionized its approach to ground warfare. Obvious changes include new weaponry. Ukrainian forces no longer train with old Soviet-era arms. Western-style weapons are now standard, making soldiers more effective. A soldier with the call sign Chasik told the Kyiv Post, "The guys have become higher level, both on the range and in combat. They've become much more, how to put it, effective. Without training, it would be extremely difficult in battle." More effective soldiers also mean better coordination. Ukraine's main training now involves infantry units working in small groups, firing from various distances before falling back to a work location. These drills seem perfectly suited for Ukraine's new assault forces. These small units get in, engage and eliminate Russian troops, and then withdraw to let heavier Ukrainian units secure the territory. The goal of Ukraine's infantry training is accuracy combined with speed, and we are now seeing the results on the battlefield. Ukraine is applying these new tactics for both defense and offense. The Kyiv Post spoke with another soldier, call sign Shambhala, who explained further. Each exercise is about survival, both for each of them and for the group as a whole. A small group can inflict much greater damage than an entire infantry company. Our training principle is called lone soldier in the field, Shambhala said. One person moving, knowing camouflage, knowing the technical characteristics of his weapon, reading the enemy's intent, can strike, withdraw, strike again, withdraw again, so we can hold back the enemy with a small, mobile, survivable group. Once again, Ukraine is demonstrating its ability to adapt to every Russian tactic. The very training methods Ukraine uses for defense now appear to be what its new assault groups are using to reclaim territory. Returning to Mali Shcherbaki, Ukraine will also be eager to retake any territory in Zaporizhzhia because of Russia's actions at the nuclear power plant in that region. Russia captured this plant early in the war and has held it since. Now, Russia seems to be trying to disconnect the plant from the Ukrainian grid, and it is succeeding. As the Kyiv Independent reported on October 12th, Russia has taken the unprecedented step of deliberately severing the connection between the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the Ukrainian power grid. This was not a careful decoupling. It appears Russia literally cut the cord by striking a power line on September 23rd. The plant has been running on backup diesel generators ever since. This is extremely dangerous and appears to be a move by Russia to connect the plant to its own power grid, as stated by Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha in a post on X. Not only is this an attempted theft of a peaceful Ukrainian nuclear facility, unauthorized actions of Russia's State Nuclear Energy Corporation, Rosatom, violate internationally recognized nuclear safety protocols, contradict Ukrainian license, and directly threaten a nuclear incident, Sybiha declared. These Russian actions put the liberation of Mali's Sherbaki into a new light. It may seem like one small village in Zaporizhzhia that Ukraine has freed, but in the larger context of the region, a 3-kilometer push across a 5-kilometer front is a critical step for Ukraine. It moves the country's forces slightly closer to a nuclear power plant that Russia is mismanaging to the point of a potential nuclear disaster. Ukraine cannot let that happen. This is why its assault groups will likely intensify their efforts in Zaporizhzhia in the coming months. Ukraine's new strategy is proving effective elsewhere, such as in Dobropilya and Donetsk. But it may be in Zaporizhzhia, where Ukraine must push the hardest to prevent Russia from making one catastrophic mistake too many with a nuclear power plant. Soon, Ukraine's forces may be aided by a new type of drone that could inflict even more damage on Russia's defenses. AI-controlled drone swarms could be on the horizon after Lithuania provided Ukraine with an incredible experimental weapon. Learn more about it in our next video, and be sure to subscribe to Warzone Party for more content covering Ukraine's latest adaptations to Russian tactics.